because Israel's supporters in the United States accuse anyone who criticizes Israel or criticizes the U.S.-Israeli relationship or criticizes the Israel lobby as an anti-Semite, what we have is a situation where the term has become to some extent meaningless. I've been called an anti-Semite on numerous occasions since Steve Walt and I wrote the Israel lobby article and then the book. And I believe there's no justification for calling me an anti-Semite. But again, I criticize the lobby in Israel and the U.S.-Israeli relationship. So by definition, I'm an anti-Semite. If you ask me what is real anti-Semitism, it is where somebody hates Jews because they are Jews and behaves towards them in noxious ways. And I'm fully aware that there are instances of anti-Semitism in the United States and around the world more generally. There are anti-Semites in the land. But I think when most people call someone an anti-Semite these days, that's not what they're talking about. They're using the elastic definition to criticize huge numbers of people who are saying things that Israel's supporters don't like.
I mean, it is basic First Amendment law that the government cannot get involved in evaluating the content of speech, whether your speech is motivated by a disgust over what the IDF is doing in Gaza, or whether your speech is motivated by a hatred for Jews. You have the right to say what you want.
Absolutely. I agree. But it's just very important to understand what's going on here. The greatest threat to the First Amendment in this country at this point in time is Israel's supporters. It's the Israel lobby. And what's going on here, to dig a layer deeper, is that Israel is doing horrendous things in Gaza, and all sorts of people are talking about it and criticizing Israel. And what the lobby wants to do is shut down that criticism before it goes too far and before too many people recognize exactly what's happening. And the only way they can shut down that criticism is to basically throw the First Amendment out the window. And that's what's happening here. It's very hard to find anyone who would criticize Israel in the mainstream media, for example. And there were surveys that were done before October 7th, which showed that many academics self-censored when it came to Israel. If you were an academic and you were to criticize Israel or criticize the U.S.-Israeli relationship in a serious way, you would pay a significant price. There was just no question about that. Steve and I wrote the article in 2006 and the book in 2007, and we have lengthy discussions of all sorts of cases where people were punished one way or another in the academic world for criticizing Israel. And then if you go into the mainstream media, you were grabbing the third rail for sure. But what's happened here, Judge, is that as a result of October 7th and what the Israelis have done in response to October 7th, all sorts of people are criticizing Israel. And given that we have social media, especially platforms like TikTok, Israel and the lobby and the U.S.-Israeli relationship are taking a beating. So what's happening is that the lobby is desperate to shut this down. These protests on campus just mortify people in the lobby. And the question is, how can they stop them? So tremendous pressure is being put on university administrators, university presidents in particular, and tremendous pressure is being put on the White House and on Congress to act to shut down the protests on campus. Look, just to give you two examples that highlight what's going on here. Was there any discussion of anti-Semitism on college and university campuses before October 7th? Was there a big uproar about anti-Semitism in academia before October 7th? The answer is no.
Right.
The second question I would ask you is, the president of Harvard and the president of the University of Pennsylvania have been pushed overboard, largely by rich donors who are joined at the hip with Israel. These are people who have a passionate attachment to Israel, who have interfered at Harvard and Penn to get these two women presidents fired. Do you think if October 7th had not happened, that these women would be in power now?
Well, of
And
course they would.
of course they would. They were thrown overboard, right? Because they didn't crack down on the protesters. And this is why the Colombia president is in trouble. It's why the Northwestern president is in trouble. The lobby desperately wants every president and every politician to crack down on the protesters. And automatically that takes us into freedom of speech territory.
Right.
And what's happening here very clearly is that the lobby is working overtime to undermine the First Amendment. What we are doing is driven in large part by Israel's supporters who work overtime, who are relentless in their efforts to get the United States to support Israel no matter what.
And who have caused this mantra, Israel is our closest ally, to be spread and articulated amongst members of Congress and in the government of both parties and all ideologies.
Of course, there's a whole slew of mantras that these Congress people and people in the White House spew so that they get support from the lobby. And at least the lobby doesn't go after them and try to defeat them in the next election. I mean, this is the problem that President Biden faces, right? He's up for re-election in November, and he knows full well that if he's critical of Israel or he threatens to cut off aid to Israel, that the end result will be that he'll lose for sure in the fall. I mean, he might lose anyway, especially given where these protests are going. But if he crosses Israel or crosses the lobby, they will take revenge on him. This is just the way it works.